Kit Gurus with Phanteks at CES 2023. We are going to come back to these NV7 cases in a while, but first we've got to look at some other stuff. First, we're going to race around some updates. This is the Shift XT that I reviewed, feels like 1,000 years ago. You can see there's an upgrade or an optional extra, which is an LCD panel. It's a 1440p panel and it is a conventional screen, albeit tiny, so you connect it over HDMI and can use it to display, for example, HW info. That'd be my preference, or failing that, a little picture. Also, the Revolt SFX power supply, rated at 850 watts, ATX3, as we can see, it has the 12 volt high power connector. We have a full set of cables to go with the Revolt SFX, so even though it is tiny, this is an SFX power supply that can indeed power your entire high-end PC. A quick scamper around some Glacier series water cooling hardware, blocks for NVIDIA 40 series. It turns out that the new preferred colour for Phanteks is white. They're going to use white as their prime colour. Here we have black, and here we have chrome. Combo reservoir pump and distro plates. This is the R260 Glacier with a D5. Let's just turn it to give a sideways look. Obviously that's the white version. And there we have the black. And then we come to the Glacier CPU blocks. This is for AM5, again in white. We'll be seeing more of this shortly. The white material also diffuses light, so when you turn it on, the RGB that you simply cannot see diffuses through the material. There's the AM5 in black and Intel LGA1700. These are the M25 fans that came with the G500 case, shown on display 120/140 white and black RGB in the hub. And then we move across to some air coolers. Numbered S4, S5 and T6 depending on the number of heat pipes. So we have the S4 120, S5 120, which looks slimmer because it hasn't got a fan on it, but if we put the two side by side, we can see that they're actually physically almost identical apart from the heat pipes. And then this enormous Polar T6 120, which essentially is two of those coolers doubled up. Absolutely hefty with 6 heat pipes. Glacier series all-in-one coolers into 40mm and 360mm. The name pretty much tells you what you need to know. So Glacier 1 240 T30 is the fan Gen 2, i.e. this is a revised Glacier all-in-one. And then you can see high-end Gen 8 pump by Acetec. So the key points here for me are a complete absence of RGB. We've got T30 fans, which are high performance, go up to a monstrous 3000 RPM. You've got a flick switch on the hub to control the mode. You've got 3 different profiles that you can set. And T30 because they are 30mm thick. They also use that clever crystalline polycarbonate material for the blades, which means you have a very small tip clearance to the housing. The consequence is that Phanteks is completely certain that the performance of this AIO is going to be awesomely great. Must confess, looking forward to seeing that. Luke, who's currently behind the camera, is almost certainly going to be on doing the review. So we'll be asking him what he thinks. As you can also see, we do have an infinity mirror RGB effect on the pump body, which as always plugs in to the Phanteks RGB ecosystem. This is a bit of a work in progress. This is a Pro 2 case that's been modified. It's now the Pro 2 server, as you can see by the motherboard, which clearly was an MSI once and has been spray painted just to show where the motherboard goes. It can contain multiple graphics cards, has this hefty GPU brace, so it goes from top to bottom, and then has a finger coming out to firmly hold the graphics card in place. In fact, I'm looking, it appears to be clamping the graphics card in place top and bottom. Those are going nowhere, and because the case has been opened out, there's plenty of space in the floor, so you can install not only an ATX power supply should you choose, but you can go indeed full server power supply. This is for companies who want to build their own servers, want to move away from cloud computing and actually do it all in-house. 3 revamped cases. When we came to CES last 3 years ago, we saw the P500A. Now we have the G500A. If Luke moves around the front, we can see the rather subtle lighting effects through that front mesh and then going along the power supply shroud. Next to that, we have the G360A. These are 2 models already on sale. And then we come to the budget G300A. This sells for a mere £59 euros dollars, but despite that it has enough space to support a full-length 40 series graphics card. And if you come around the front, Luke, you can see the RGB light show that's working through the front mesh panel. As we look at this build in NV7 with multiple fans, it won't make a lot of sense until we take a closer look at the fans that are in the case. So let's just go to the right before we return to this brand new case. The new D30, so we've had T30, now we've got D30, in white or black, and in regular or reverse. So as you see, you can have the fans either in intake or exhaust without changing the orientation. It means, unlike, say, the Thermaltake SWAF fan, where you can reverse the flow, you actually have to choose the fan for the installation. But the point is that you can't automatically tell whether a fan is in intake or exhaust just by looking at it in operation. Whether the hub is facing you or not does not tell you which is intake or exhaust when the fan's rotating. A couple of neat features. We've got some plastic clips. And we've got some covers for the screws. And now the fans come apart. When you have those parts in place, as you'll see in those cases, the installation's really neat and tidy. The trick with the RGB lighting in these new D30 fans is that in essence you have an integrated Halos RGB fan frame. As we'll see in the builds in 2 seconds, it looks absolutely remarkable. So this NV7 has got 4 fans in the side position, 2 in the rear, 3 in the floor, and 3 in the roof, which is 12 in total. The NV7 is all about showing off the hardware to the best effect. So we've got glass on the front, glass on the side. The structure of the case is much heavier duty than we're used to seeing. The steel used in the frame is substantial, and even the rear door is an incredibly hefty piece of kit. You can remove the glass and the case just does not flex. Furthermore, the gap between these glass panels is absolutely microscopic. If we take a look at this empty white case, come around the back, Luke. I'm calling this the back. It could be the side if you turn the case towards you. Open that door, operate that thumb screw, pull off the top. And we can see that the structure of the case is substantial. That back door is structural and is far more substantial than you might expect. And now we can see that with the motherboard rear I/O here, the cables will feed out through these management plastic fingers, and the cables coming out of your graphics card will feed down through there. There's grommets. They can feed underneath here and then vanish out of the side of the case, which is why the builds are so clean. There are no cables on show. And with the 2 glass panels removed, you can see that the structure is incredibly open, and yet I'm pushing on that fairly hard. The amount of flex is minimal. You might wonder, where does the air come in? When you've got solid glass there and there, the answer is it depends. However, the bottom is most likely your intake. There's a lot of space, so air can flow through here and in. A clever feature is that this bottom fan bracket can be flipped, so you can either have it like so, where the fans are horizontal, it's wedged, and now the fans are inclined and parallel to the angled floor. This case is designed for 120 fans throughout, so you have 3 slots so you can move the fans across depending on whether you have the bracket flipped or not. You could, if you choose, cram in 140s, but it wouldn't really look very good. And then you have fan positions also in this side position here. So if you choose, for example, to put a radiator in this position, it would make sense to have this as exhaust. But if you're just having fans there, you might choose to have that as intake, feeding air to your graphics card. Plenty of options. It's a novel and innovative piece of work. It has integrated RGB in this panel here and here, which I'll show properly in a review. This RGB strip simply pulls out, and that means you now have better access at the top of your motherboard during your build. This strip has a couple of screws holding it in place, but when they're removed, that can also be pulled out, and that means you get better access to your cable grommets. This is the correct position if you're using an ATX motherboard in your build. If you choose, however, you can flip it around to give yourself extra clearance, say if you're using an eATX motherboard. Very neat and tidy. Now you've seen a handful of those features, and we'll dig into those further in a review, you can understand that actually this case, despite having solid glass on the main panel and the front, actually has plenty of airflow. Air can easily flow through the floor and the side position. The rear positions, there are 2 fan positions there, are actually occupied by a distro plate reservoir, and then we have fans in the roof. And returning to the build in the black NV7 case, we can see a couple of other little features. There's the anti-sag bracket on this enormous 3 kilo RTX 4090 graphics card, and in front of the fans in the floor of the case, there's a little blanking plate which just prevents any air from recirculating and heading back out the wrong way. Also, if we look to the rear of the case, we can see we have 2 120mm fans in that position. The NV7 goes on sale in February, priced at $219, and is going to put my cable management skills to a stern test. I can see myself calling James for assistance on this one. But it's certainly a novel and interesting case, which is frankly what we expect from Phanteks. So, Phanteks at CES 2023, we're done, and we'll move on to the next video. Meanwhile, if you haven't subscribed, ask yourself, why haven't you subscribed? Do please do it immediately. Ring the bell and give us a thumbs up.